This is Android Basics, in which we bring you up to date on the things that you should know to use your Android phone.
Now we turn to our Android Basics section, and it's picking up something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which was starting to have a look at Samsung, where we looked at the history of Samsung and what they did. And now we're getting into Samsung OneUI. And Warren brings us a demo of how to set up a Samsung phone.
Let's go ahead and start by looking at the first screen that you come to where you enable accessibility. And then if you're running anything that is less than OneUI 5.x, that is based on Android 13, if anything lower than that, even including the Galaxy S22, which came out of the factory with the OneUI 4.x, you're not going to be able to hear your passwords without tapping on accessibility and going to enable the ability to hear your passwords. So that's something to keep in mind if you're running anything that is running something other than OneUI 5.x. I am showing you this. We are on the screen now. I have reset my Galaxy S21. And of course, this one is going to be able to let me hear the passwords spoken because I had updated to the OneUI 5.x. I am now on the setup screen, and what I will do now is to see if the trusted method of holding down two fingers on the screen to enable accessibility works or not, or if I needed to do the up and down volumes or the power and the up volume to enable accessibility. Let me now go ahead and put down my two fingers on the face of the phone.
To turn on accessibility mode, continue holding the screen with two fingers until you hear a beep. Talkback on. Welcome to Talkback. Welcome to Talkback. Page 1 of 5. Talkback is a screen reader intended for situations or people who have difficulty seeing the screen. It gives you spoken feedback so that you can use your device without looking at the screen. You can turn Talkback on or off by holding both volume keys for several seconds. When Talkback is on, the focused item on the screen is spoken out loud. Swiping right will move to the next item, and swiping left will move to the previous item. Swipe right now.
Okay, so you heard what it says. I'm going to tap on the close.
Close button. Close tutorial. You can come back to it anytime in Talkback settings.
So in other words, all I'm doing is closing the Talkback tutorial.
Close button. Allow Talkback to make and manage phone calls. Allow button. Double tap to activate.
So the first thing we heard is whether or not we'll allow Talkback to manage phone calls. In other words, if there's a phone call coming in, it'll let you know that there's a phone call coming in. And it's totally up to you. I most of the time have mine set to don't allow. Now for this tutorial, however, we're just going to say allow.
Samsung Setup Wizard. Welcome.
All right, so here we are. And so if you were on some other Samsung phone that has anything less than OneUI 5.x, at this point, you want to find the accessibility and tap on it. And now I'm going to tap on accessibility, which is found near the bottom.
Accessibility. Accessibility. Talkback. Double tap to
Tapping
activate.
on accessibility, we heard Talkback. So Talkback is highlighted. Now, if you have some visual capabilities and you want to customize how you see things on the screen, then you can look below here because we've got
Visibility enhancements. Heading.
And below that we've got
Not selected. Default button 1 of 3 and list 3 items.
there's default, and
Double
to the
tap
right
to
of that,
activate. Not selected. High contrast button 2 of 3.
there's the high
Double
contrast.
tap to activate.
And then the last item there,
Not selected. Large display button 3 of 3.
you could
double
choose
tap to
large
activate.
display. Now moving on, we got
Color inversion out of list.
color
Double tap
inversion.
to off color inversion. High contrast keyboard.
You could
Double
change
tap
that as
to
well.
off high contrast screen zoom. Font size. Magnification. More visibility enhancements.
And you could continue
tap
and
to
choose
activate.
those if you have some visibility needs. Now, the one though that I want to focus on here is the ability to hear passwords, because by default, if you have a device that is running Android 13 or higher, Samsung has made it possible to where you don't need to go into TalkBack and turn on accessibility or the ability to speak passwords. But if you are running something lower than that, you need to tap on TalkBack to go enable that. So I'll tap on TalkBack and show you what I'm
Screen
talking
off.
about. I'm going to turn back on my screen.
Screen on.
And
Accessibility.
let's tap on
More
TalkBack.
visibility. TalkBack. TalkBack. Navigate up button. Double tap to
We are
activate.
in
Double tap and
TalkBack
hold to
now.
long press.
And what I'm going to do is to tap on the settings of TalkBack. If you're a swiper, you can just swipe till you hear settings, for example,
TalkBack.
and you swipe.
TalkBack on. Switch. TalkBack shortcut. Hold volume up and down keys. Press side and volume up keys. 2 of 4 in list 4 items. Double tap to activate.
So in other words, what you are being told here is that besides that holding down of the 2 fingers that we did earlier, if you had wanted to, you could have just held down the up volume and the power button to enable accessibility. Now, let's move on to settings.
On. TalkBack shortcut. Switch. Settings. 3 of 4. Double tap to activate.
Now, here is settings, and this is where we tap on to go change the ability to speak passwords if you're running anything lower than OneUI 5.x.
TalkBack settings. Navigate up button. Out of list.
And
Double tap to
here,
activate.
we need to
Double
go
tap and hold
down to the
long
bottom and tap on advanced. It could be that lower versions of Android, or rather lower versions of TalkBack, may have the ability right in here to speak passwords, but you need to go tap on advanced at the bottom.
Advanced settings.
Tap
14 of
here.
14. Advanced settings. Navigate up button. Out of list.
And here
Double
in the
tap to
advanced,
activate.
we got
Double
the
tap and
following.
Speak passwords. Passwords always spoken on. Switch. 2 of 11 in list 11 items.
So here by
Double tap to
default,
activate.
that would have been off. So that's the one thing you need to pay attention to. Of course, if you don't want that, you could always use a headset. But by default, you need to make sure you turn that on if you're running anything lower than OneUI 5.x. Now let's go back.
Developer settings. 11 of 11. Back button. Up. TalkBack setting. Back button. TalkBack. How to use TalkBack button. Double tap to activate.
We're back here to this screen, and I'm going to go in here.
TalkBack settings. Navigate up button. Out of list. Double tap to activate. Double tap and hold to long press.
I'm going to turn that usage hints so that we're not being too verbose here.
Verbosity. 3 of 14. Verbosity. Speak usage hints after describing content. Suggest how to use on. Switch. 3 of 16. Double tap to activate.
So if that bothers you, you turn it off like I'm going to do right now.
Off.
And let's go back.
Use. Back button. TalkBack settings. Back button. TalkBack. How back button.
Back again.
Accessibility.
And
Talk-
back again.
Back button. When Samsung Setup Wizard. Accessibility.
So we're back on the main setup screen. Now we need to tap on the...
Start button.
Now, if you want to choose a different language, right above that start button is the language selector.
English.
By default, mine is set to English. And so if I tap here, for example,
Selected. Radio button. English in list. Select language.
we got a lot of...
Not selected. Radio button. Espanol. Not selected. Radio button. Francais. Not selected. Radio button. Italiano.
So you can go through this and choose your language. There's a bunch of them here. I'm going to hit the back button again.
Back button. Out of Samsung Setup Wizard. English.
And below that is that start button.
Start button.
Let's hit start and get going.
Insert a SIM card to connect to a mobile network. For your review, I agree to the Samsung terms and conditions, including the arbitration terms and the dispute resolution agreement.
So here we got some agreements, and also it's also talking about the SIM card and all of that. And so now under for your review, we got to accept some agreements here. We got checkboxes.
I agree to the Samsung terms and conditions, including the arbitration terms and the dispute resolution agreement.
So you could check that if you agree.
This includes your agreement that Samsung may update your phone software automatically from time to time to ensure the safety, security, and functionality of your phone.
Okay, so
I
I'm
agree to
going
the
to check
Samsung
that one.
terms and conditions. Checked.
Next, we come across.
I agree to the Samsung privacy policy.
So in other words, you could check this, and if you want to read the details of it, below that it will say details.
Details.
But now though, let's tap on
I agree to the Samsung
I agree.
privacy. Checked.
And then next we got,
I agree to the sending of diagnostic data to Samsung. Optional.
so this one is optional. You don't need to check it. And I'm going to leave it as. And then below that we got,
Details. Agree to all. Optional.
there's agree to all optional. And now I'm just going to tap on agree at the bottom right.
Agree. Button. Wi-Fi. Choose a Wi-Fi network. Heading.
Here we are now talking about choosing a Wi-Fi network, and I'm going to show you that the passwords are
The
spoken.
mesh. 1 of 11 in
Here's
list.
the mesh,
Enter password. The mesh.
and I'm going to
Password,
show you
enter
a
password.
few of my passwords.
Shift off. Symbols. Expression. Apostrophe. Pound. At.
You hear that?
Dash. Space bar. Up quote. Apostrophe. Quote. Colon. Semicolon. Comma. Left parent. Ask amper. Equals sign. One-handed. The mesh. Out
Now,
list.
if you did not enable that, the speaking of passwords, all you would be hearing is bullet, bullet, bullet. So I'm going to put in my Wi-Fi password, and then we'll continue.
Connect. 4 of 4 in list. 4 items. Window the mesh.
I just typed in my password, and now connect.
Keyboard hidden. Samsung Setup Wizard. In progress. Progress bar. Out of list. Getting your phone ready. This may take a few minutes. Service. Hey Google, model update. Updating voice model to better recognize when you say Hey Google.
Now, while we're waiting, there's something I want to mention here in passing. That is, if you're not
Just a
sure
few
as to whether
moments.
or not your language
Copy
is
apps and
supported,
data. Heading.
it's always important
apps and
to
data.
not put in a SIM card, because if you put in a SIM card and your language is not supported, then you may wind up not hearing any TTS output. Just go ahead and set it without the SIM card in there, and just set it up using Wi-Fi. Now, let's proceed from here.
You can choose to transfer your apps, photos, contacts, Google account, and more.
All right, I'm going to tap on next.
Next button. Use your old device. You need your old Android, iPhone registered sign, or iPad registered sign device.
Now, you could do that, using the cable and newer Samsung device. You could even use like a Wi-Fi and all of that. Now, if you don't want to do that, you could skip that and say, hey, I'm just going to sign in and bring my account info from the cloud.
Can't use old device.
So in
Button.
this case, I'm going to tap, I can use all device.
Checking info. Account setup.
And by the way, this is using the Samsung TTS as a default.
Sign in with your Google account. Learn more. Sign in.
All right.
Sign in with your
So
Google
I'm going to
account.
sign in with my
Learn more.
Google account.
With your Google account. Edit box, email. Edit box, email or phone. English, US, QWERTY shown.
And I'm going
Expand
to
toolbar.
put in my username and password. So from on here, you're just following the setup prompts and all of that, and go ahead and finish that. I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but I'm just going to finish setting it up, and then we'll look at the launcher.
Samsung Setup Wizard. You're all set up. Finish button.
There we go. I'm all set up. I'm going to tap on finish at the bottom.
Finish button. Device unlocked. Home. Got an eSIM mobile plan. Tap here to add your eSIM to your phone. Wi-Fi is required. Weather. Double tap and drag to move in pager. Syncing's about to start. Your apps will sync and be backed up so they stay up to date on all your Samsung devices.
Now, what I want to mention here in passing, however, is that unlike Google or Pixel phones, whereupon when you are done setting up the device and you are on the home screen, you'll immediately see those customizations that you had, that you imported or restored. It is not quite the same with Samsung. It has to finish importing it,
Finish setting up your Warren's
from
S21. Just a few more steps.
Galaxy's settings or Galaxy Store.
Screen off.
So right now, my screen is not looking like what I had prior to resetting the device, but it will be there. So if you come here and you're seeing something else, just be patient with it. So here I am on my home screen. Of course, it's setting up my apps and all of that. But I do want to mention here in passing that at the bottom, of course, you're going to find your dock. And just above that dock, you'll find where it talks about pages. So if you have several pages on your home screen, you'll find something that says page 1 of X, and you can move your finger and tap on the second page or the third page. Now that could be a little bit tricky because they're very close to each other. But I just suggested simply swiping from right to left with 2 fingers to move to the next page. But here's what I'm talking about. Right now, though, it's not going to show us many pages because it hasn't finished restoring my stuff yet. But right here above the dock area is where you'll find that. And in this case, though, it's just going to say page 1 of 1.
Page 1 of 1, default page.
And there we heard page 1 of 1, default page. And we'll talk about how to change pages. Like I said, you just swipe right or left to move to the next page, and then swipe from left to right to move to the previous page. If you don't want to find that little strip there between your icons and the dock to find which page to tap on to move on to. I'll now hand this back to the podcast crew.
And Warren, was that your S21 that you were doing that on, I'm assuming?
I did. And of course, that was with the OneUI 5.x. Now, if it was OneUI 4.x that it came out of the factory with, of course, the passwords and all of that would not have been spoken. I would have had to go in the way I was showing to enable that from the accessibility or the talkback settings or whatever voice assistant if you're on an older device. So it's Samsung. For some reason, Samsung never follows whatever Google tells Samsung. Samsung does the other thing because they're the big boys in the room and they can afford to do whatever they please. And so as of Oreo, everybody's setup would be to speak the password right away, but only Samsung said, nah, we're not going to do it that way until that 5.x when they finally came around. So if you got an older device or if you got a phone that maybe is like a 4.x, OneUI 4x, you'll have to follow that procedure I was talking about.
I remember setting up my S21 FE. It came with 4.1, and it was the case. I could never enter my password. That was a real trouble. I'm glad now it's fixed.
If you have an S21 running, S21 FE running 4.x, and then it gets an update running 5.x, and you system reset it, what will it be running when it comes back up? Will it reset to its 4.x state, or will it reset to its 5.x state? It will reset to 5. Yeah.
Yeah. 5.
Yeah.
I tested and approved.
It'll be 5.x. But even if you set up, for example, like the Galaxy S22, out of the factory, it's going to come with 4.x. And so you're not going to hear the password spoken.
And a headset will fix it, won't it? So if it is not speaking your password, attaching a headset will fix that, won't it?
Absolutely.
Even if you haven't hit the accessibility button, plugging in a headset will
exactly. Just like it used to be in the olden days, you had to have a headset in order to get that process going through.
Yeah. We'll get on to some of the Samsung advantages, but while we're talking about, I guess, setup and related things, I do like the fact you have 2 accessibility hardware shortcuts.
Yeah, Samsung excels in that department.
I just love that we're now in a time where like when I was setting up my phone, I just had to put 2 fingers on it to make it, because I remember the days when TalkBack wasn't even on your phone, you know. You had to get someone to help you install it and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I mean, I guess it's the same for Google phones as well, but
And
I do
in
like
those
that.
days, you were putting 2 fingers up at it, weren't you? Rather than
Pretty
on it.
much, yeah. Yeah.
Well, you can still use a 2-finger hold down, but like I showed on the OnePlus, it doesn't work on the OnePlus. So some phones don't use that, but it's a legacy mode, and I don't want to see that go away.
I mean, the volume up and down is probably preferred, isn't it? Even though the other one is helpful, it's the one you know should work.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
if the 2-finger thing hadn't worked, I'd have known that I could
Yeah.
do that.
Sorry,
Oh,
Shane.
sorry. I quite like the Samsung TTS as well, the voice. I quite like it.
I
I don't
hate
use
those.
I
hate the
don't
Samsung
use it
TTS.
as I don't use it all the time, but I think it's a little bit more listenable than the Google one sometimes.
I like the UK male voice on Samsung TTS.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. I've heard
You
the
should
female.
you should hear that. I mean, it's real good.
I like the female one. I mean, it's not a voice I use all the time. I actually use vocalizer voices, which I know some of you don't like, but
But they will disappear.
will they?
Yeah.
I think so too. Well, there's not been any updates, in the way of updates from Vocalizer or the Code Factory guys. So I don't know.
You
I've
know,
kind of lost,
being a
I lost faith
developer,
in those guys.
it
I don't
says
use it anymore.
you need to update your app to compatible with Android 13. So they didn't. They will be going away very soon.
Oh yeah, that's if they haven't done that. Yeah, that would be annoying.
They only have to tweak that little thing though. There's an article about how to do that, isn't there? That's Bible Gateway
But
had that
they
issue.
don't even do that, Ed.
No, but just need to send them the link and they'll probably do it.
Acapella TTS did that, but no vocalizer.
Well, I
Yeah.
have an a cappella voice as well, so if I get really stuck, I can use that. But I don't mind that. I've got the Samsung voice on my watch, and I don't mind that.